definitely say, because I was in private practice before, it was a lot scarier in firm life, such that I would try to hide the pregnancy as far as I could until, at some point people could tell it wasn't just I was fat or something, right? Like I really was having a baby and then having to tell. So, comparing that experience to in-house, I certainly felt it was a lot easier in-house. And I'll say it does come down to company culture. We can talk a lot of corporate speak and culture and all that, but look, when I brought it up with my manager, she was like, and I was almost like instantly apologetic, right? Like, oh, I'm on leave, don't worry, I'm going to create a plan, we're going to be good. And my manager's like, stop, congratulations, we'll talk about that stuff later. How do you feel about it? Are you excited? And that really set the tone. That was a sigh of relief of like, we're not going to talk logistics, we'll handle that. I'm just so excited for you, and just to speak a little bit highly of my company, I have a colleague who interviewed pregnant and she still got the job. So I really do think it comes down to company culture. And, I'm lucky to work for a company like Toyota that it's possible. And one of my BFFs, my old firm work wife, she interviewed pregnant at PepsiCo and got the job. So I think the movement is there, that it is no longer stigmatized, but it does start with leadership.
I think you're exactly right. And it is, again, like when I've done videos on parental leave and things like that, it's so interesting and how scary it is for people to announce pregnancy. I mean, it's a fear. I think it really is a fear. It is. And people in their mind can worry. And so I say it can either be like bearable or terrible. And so the reaction, because if someone immediately, the reaction is, oh, well, we'll have to see, like you can just the body language, or someone's like, that's amazing. It's that sigh of relief that I think does send that signal to the whole organization, kind of going back to what Deanna said about living that culture. And so I think it's so important for in-house teams to think about that, how you're reacting, because so many people out there, and whether they're saying it or they're making comments on social media, is telling people we'll never disclose until you've actually started, because it's all this fear of someone taking that job away from you or not hiring you. And as all three of you have talked about, giving that leave, is a temporary thing. And I'm sure that any global attendees are going to be horrified that we're not giving anything less than a year. And I lived in Australia for a couple of years, so I know that all too well. But I just think it's a super helpful reminder for in-house legal teams of having that support, especially in leadership. And so a question we just got that I think really plays into this is Meredith, because I know, May and Deanna, you're big organizations. And so the good thing is big organizations, it can be harder at times to get something done, but it's at Stash. A question came in saying that someone works for a startup, not a huge legal team, but in growth mode, which is obviously a part of everyone in tech. Startups is very familiar with everything that can mean in real life, but they do not have a parental leave policy. And so how does someone bring that up to the C-suite? And so as you talked about, Meredith, it happened, as often happens in startups, things happen because when there's a need, but how do you see a nice way to bring that up to the C-suite and have that raised if someone's not sure what to do?
Yeah, I think it just has to be. And to be honest, at a startup, there are many things that you just do not put in place until there is a circumstance that requires you to put it in place. And it does not mean that the company or the leadership team or whatever does not think they need one. It just hasn't been necessary yet. So resources to put together a parental leave policy and everything that's required there just hasn't been done yet. So there's always going to be a first person. I remember the first person at Stash, and I won't call her out by name, but I specifically remember the first person. And I remember we were small and we were in person at the time, so you could see she was pregnant, which doesn't happen all the time anymore because people are on camera. But we were like, all right, it's time for a parental leave policy. Let's figure out what other people do. Let's hit up our network, figure out what we want to do here. And there just is going to be that first person that starts that. But just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean that anyone agrees it shouldn't be there. I think it'll probably, if you're at the right place, people are just going to say, of course we need one, let's do it. Let's put the resource in there and get it in place. So I think, see something, say something. If it's got to be done, somebody's got to speak up and it'll happen.